All right. Welcome to a live podcast. Obviously, we're not going to talk about it, but we all know why we're spending so much time at home, and we thought it'd be cool to do something live with everyone home and answer questions, kind of impromptu round table, like we're all sitting at the same firehouse together. So, engine house guys we got on here are Torres. I see Bert, Jared, Sanders, Tim Schultz, Doc. I saw Konas. A few other people came in. I thought I heard Steve. So kind of gonna throw it around the room, see what everyone's been doing. We don't want to talk about the virus and stuff. We want to talk about firefighting. I do have some topics if we come up with nothing, but with this group of characters here, I'm pretty sure we're gonna have no problem coming up with stuff to talk about. Just put a whole nother big group in. You can mute and unmute yourselves. You could change your name over there if you have any questions. Just round table. There are over 20 of us now. So what's been going on, Torres? How things going in Chicago? Let's fire it up.
Going good. It's not too bad. It's actually, it's just different, hanging out with the kids all day long. Just having them all in the house all at this one time. It's, other than that, it's not too bad. We're still doing everything day by day. Everything's normal. Shifts, fires, all that's just normal. Nothing. We're trying not to treat it as such.
Gotcha thing. Hey, Jared, how things going in Southwest Missouri?
They're good. Really, daily life for us hasn't changed at all. Our call volume has actually dropped pretty substantially compared to before. So, if anything, our job's gotten a little easier.
Good.
Definitely that one, Jared.
What's that?
Definitely agree with that one. The call volume has gone down huge, and it just it's so funny how when you say that it's why so different. I mean, I understand what's going on, but you don't need us all the other times. Now, why all of a sudden you need it? Now it's okay. It's this is what's going on. But prior, it's like, oh, we need you there, but it's still the same routine, same stuff. It's fun.
Yeah.
To say that, Jared.
Nothing's really changed, and all the essential pat me on my back stuff is kind of bogus because really, if anything, we've eliminated ourselves from it more so than endangered ourselves by it.
Agreed. Who else we got on here? Gary, you get signed in. If you're trying to use the microphone and all that, it gave us a hard time. We had to unplug all that. So anybody, any non-engine house training people, feel free to unmute yourself. Anyone got any questions, any follow-ups before we get into our little podcast spiel? Anybody? All right. Not even firefighter Bojangles. All right. Hey, so the topic for today, I've seen a ton of them lately, and we've been running them, and even in the past 6 months or so, we've had several pretty tough basement fires in the St. Louis area that I've seen or talked to people that were on, including my department had actually a mayday with a lost firefighter in a RIT team rescue at a basement fire. I don't necessarily want to get into critiquing that or anything. If people have questions, or heard about it, we'll say a little bit. But in general, I just wanted to, talk about challenges and, problems that are generally faced, things that we need to think about on basement fires for today. Traditionally, this group focuses on predominantly truck work, but basically all our engine guys for the most part are in here too. So we're going to just do all encompassing engine and truck work at basement fires. All right. There's 21 people on here. Nobody's got anything to say besides me.
All right, I got it. Being that I work with Jeff, I'll just kind of start out with some of the things that we saw. I know the most recent one, I guess, that Jeff and I kind of talked about, forcible entry and access was a big issue, along with communication, I guess. But it was a pretty tight exterior stairwell, bars over all the windows, bars over the door, and it gave some of the first arriving companies some difficulty. If they would have gotten that basement door open, they would have been able to walk right in the basement and put everything out. Basement door gave them trouble. They ended up rerouting the line up in through the front door, and then getting access and everything to that was pretty difficult, locating that interior stairwell from the inside with all the smoke and everything. And then I don't know if that was the one where they had left a lot of bars and things like that on the windows, on the basement windows. Some of those windows are really small anyway, but I know forcible entry and access and stuff like that was a big issue for the most recent one we had.
Hey, Tim, hey, question
Yeah.
for you. We got my whole crew sitting here, and out in like West St. Louis County, we don't have many bar windows and doors and all that stuff. Kind of the question came up for you guys: how often do you force those, and how easy do you find it is to get those bars off of that stuff?
You know, a lot of times the bars, you know, as I'm sure you guys know, we kind of attach or attack the weakest points, which are usually how they're attached to the building. Most of the times we can just pop the anchors off with a bat axe or something like that, because they're just into the mortar with some real weak anchors. A lot of times on the actual door part, everybody runs with a metal cutting blade on their saw. So even that first in truck right in front of the building will have a metal saw there. If that gets fired up, they'll probably start cutting on the bigger doors, because those aren't quite as easy. But the bars over the windows, you can normally just pop off with any tool. And then you get into people kind of like refortifying these things, you know, putting 2x4s back behind stuff and additional locks and things like that make it a little bit more difficult. But the doors, a lot of times we'll start off with a saw. Windows and stuff like that you can get with we usually use our bat axe and just pry the bars off the windows. So did that answer your question?
Yep.
The I'll add to that. The roof hooks, the all metal roof hooks, work really, really good for prying off window bars. Not really needed all the time for basement windows, but for, you know, first floor windows that are higher off the ground, the all metal roof hooks work way better than a pike pole, because you could pry with them. And once you get one side, just kind of pry the whole thing open like a door and get it out of the way, or most of the time it'll just kind of pop off and fall to the ground. It's crazy how secure those bars look, but as soon as you put a Halligan or New York hook on them and pry out, they pop right off most of the time.
You guys out there, Tim and Jeff, do you have dogs, VPS? How about the new Lennox, the plastic they're putting in the windows? I was trying to bring it up on the screen share here, but I didn't want to dig into any like inappropriate videos.
Don't pull up your search history, Mike.
Yeah, I don't. Let's not do that. But no, seriously, how about? I know not everywhere has it. I know we're big on it. They're even putting into interior doors now. Like literally, if it's a U-shape, I-shape courtyard building, any large multifamily building, they're in the interior doors as well as the exterior doors, just to make entry. I was trying to bring up some slides of some good ones I want to show you guys some pictures of them. But are you guys maybe at least getting the plywood, or maybe that Lennox stuff, that plastic shit?
So
yeah, we've been.
Good. You're good.
Okay. So we do get the Lexan, like the shatterproof glass, some of that stuff, and they'll basically put that on the front. They'll put 2x4s spanning the window in the back, and then they'll use all thread and essentially just bolt the Lexan to the 2x4. And we've actually been getting, and I'll let Jeff talk about this when I'm done. But there's a company that actually puts metal over it's usually just the first floor windows and doors, and there's like an access code and all this stuff you can punch in, and they are super solid. Jeff might know the name of the company. Do you know what I'm talking about, Jeff?
That's VPS. If it's got
VPS.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have been seeing. I guess the banks kind of do that. And I was talking to somebody somewhere where the city's actually making the banks go back and remove that stuff because it's too dangerous, I guess, for us maybe. But if anybody else wants to talk about that,
I got a question about that. Are those VPS covers, are those mounted similar to how you were describing the Lexan, where they have a support system built into the wall behind the window, and then the all thread is what essentially clamps that piece of metal to the front side of the window?
Yeah, a lot of times it's at least the ones we have are cables as well, metal cables, and or those rods you're talking about. With the exception of the doors are pretty stout. The windows don't, especially if you get a saw or you get the pick in there and drive the little pins off. The doors actually can be kind of challenging the way they're mounted. It all kind of depends.
You know what's been easy, Jeff? We've used a few times the e-tools.
Oh yeah,
It's silly, but if it's a wood frame building, no problem. Ordinary construction, wood frame, it kind of sucks. You're ripping up a lot of the wall. It's like shearing a car apart, right? It kind of sucks. Ordinary brick, masonry, no problem. Pop said, but I really don't.
I think I saw that in Chicago Fire, the TV series. Did you get that from them, Mike?
It's horrible. Horrible. And they pay the bills, man. I'm all about money coming to this joint. However you get money to us, it's okay with me.
I'm just busting.
Oh, I know. I'm all about it, man. I love it. Don't bother me.
So,
look here. So if I disappear, I'm looking.
So yeah, we've covered that forceful entry and egress issues can be very problematic with basement fires. Sanders, you kind of been running a class lately. I'll let you talk a little bit about this, but getting victims or getting yourself or your crew or firefighters out of basement windows and stuff, just because older buildings without the modern fire code, they don't have to have egress windows and not necessarily walk out. Tim and I are blessed. I'd say probably 80 to 85% of our basements are walkouts in the city. So we still have the small windows and limited access, but you can stretch a line around back and go down usually a steep set of steps with a right angle 90-degree turn at the bottom, and then you're at grade with the fire. So we are blessed that the majority of our basement fires are walkout. But that's not always the case. And Sanders, if you could spend a couple of minutes talking about what you guys cover in your class and some of the basement window recovery techniques, and go from there.
Yeah, we started the firefighter down saving your own class that through Engine House, and the last one we did down in Bismarck, we had Tim Schultz Customs came along and built us a pretty solid basement window prop. Kind of after the recent fire that you guys had in the city, Tim kind of discussed it and was talking about it, where you guys had a Mayday situation when some difficulties getting the guy out of the basement, and kind of went from there. And a lot of the class is working towards not getting yourself into these situations. But as we all know, you could be one of the best guys on the job and somebody else would come along and cause some problems and cause you to have a terrible day. And it's working through this stuff. And Tim helped us build a pretty nice basement window prop. And we went through countless drills just working on getting yourself out of the basement, using webbing, using your tools, getting your partner out of the basement, and even working towards getting like unconscious firefighters out of the basement, just working through all this. A lot of it, what I've found in the class we've done, and then since we're on DEFCON 5 lockdown here in West St. Louis County because of the virus, we've set the prop up in my engine house, and we've gone down, and I think it's been an eye-opener for a lot of the guys as we go through it, just like how difficult it is either to get your butt out of the basement if you get stuck down there coming through a basement window, or just working on getting somebody else out of there. So
Yeah, I think the important thing you said, and it's like everything we teach, and especially with bailout and the RIT stuff, the best case scenario is to not get yourself in that situation, and you don't need to worry about using the webbing as a ratchet, or using a Stokes basket, or a roof ladder, or attic ladder, as like a pivot point or a fulcrum to get a firefighter out of the window. So with that, was Highbreeder on here? I thought Highbreeder's on here. Give him a second to answer. All right, maybe not. So Gary, you're next up. Get you to talk about the importance of hose line management and stretching on basement fires, both stretching through the gangway and around back, and then stretching inside and protecting that interior stairwell.
And to see Gary's mustache if he's holding his arm above his head.
Hey, it's feeling better now.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. If the doctor's office would take me, I'd be able to get my release, but yeah, not so much.
They've heard about that.
Right. No, one of the biggest things, and again, it goes back to kind of you guys have mentioned from the beginning thing, when we start looking at hose line deployments, that size up is critical, determining the basement, the entries, what type of basement do you have? Do you have a walkout? Do you have something that's a walk up? If it is a walk up, what type of well or how much room do you have in that well to be able to get to it? Which again goes back to what you started off with your forcible entry. Whenever you get down into a steep well and you might not have enough room to work your tools to be able to force the door. The biggest thing is making sure the hand line's in place before you get there. And one of the things, again, it's kind of difficult to teach guys. Keep in mind, whenever you deploy that first line, use for an example, if let's say you pull up, smoke showing, crew starts deploying that line to the front door, as that 360 is complete, all of a sudden you realize, hey, the fire's in the basement. Will be better to attack it from maybe the Charlie side or to come in through that well door, through that walkout. Don't try to redeploy your line, just deploy a second line, because when you get that first one into place and it's already charged, it's going to be more difficult to move. So you're trying to reset as you go. So leave the first line, deploy a second line. Biggest thing is, again, being able to estimate the depth of your stretch and what's the length of your stretch. How much line do you have, whether it be on a pre-connect, a dead load. Be able to read how far your setbacks are, and again, go out and look at these buildings before you have the fire there. Especially if whether it's a newer subdivision or an older area, you can drive down the street and see what is your average setback from your house, and then on your average house, what's the depth of the house. That'll give you your initial idea on what you're going to need for a hose line to be able to stretch that from the Charlie side. The only other thing that I have really to include with it is, if you are doing that stretch to the Charlie side, don't deploy a smaller line because it's easier to deploy to the Charlie side. If you need significant water, stretch that 2.5. Stretch the line that you need to put out the fire that you're going to be dealing with when you get there. So don't just practice. Anybody can stretch the small line around there, or hopefully anybody can stretch that small line around there. But practice, if you're going to practice deploying a line, practice deploying the 2.5 around to the rear of the building. And then you become very proficient with that 2.5. You'll be able to pull it off with that 1.75 inch without any problems. The other thing with that is, once you got your 2.5 stretched around to the back, what's your setup that you have? Can you then, knock down the bulk of your fire? We can break our tip off of the end of it, hook up our 1.75 inch, and then make a little bit further advance into the building, or go a little bit deeper, or use it to as an overhaul line, or use it to extinguish what little bit of fire that you have left within there. The biggest thing, though, is a lot of times you see on basement fires is we're underflowing for the amount of fire that we have in there. We got to remember, there's a lot of confined fire into that area. We need to flow water to put it out. We need the right amount of water, make it happen.
Just to add to that, I think one key term that I use a lot is just be patient, because a minute of preparation and getting your hose line ready is going to save you a ton of work and effort on the back end.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're pretty fortunate with a lot of the newer buildings. Like, we talked about the differences in the construction with the walk-ups and the walk-outs. Most of the newer ones that we have, they're all walk-outs. which again, that's easy. That's the same as going into the front door of the house. You have an entire floor to deal with as far as making entry in areas of even areas of escape or egress. But with a walk up, where you're going down into that well, you're a little bit more confined getting down into there, and which does the same thing for your egress. You have less of an area to get out.
Yeah. Along those lines, I mean, we kind of got a little ahead of ourselves, but we got a couple other of our engine guys here. Kyle, you could take it, or Jared, Doc, whoever. How about stretching through the first floor and going down the interior stairs? Say it's not a walkout. What, Jared, besides laying out the hose line, will save you and make it easier to push down those steps. You guys got anything else you want to throw in there? Little tips, tricks for everyone listening?
Yeah, one that it's kind of forgotten about. It's kind of old school, and it may be looked down on even by some people. But remember the old cellar nozzles? That's always an option. If you can't make the first floor, if you can't make that basement quickly and easily, nothing says you can't pop a hole in the floor and throw a nozzle down in there. Just to get some form of gas cooling going on, or even extinguishment going on while you continue the stretch or continue to try to find it on the first floor. And then one thing that I think we all see fairly often is when guys get ready to make the stairwell to descend down the stairwell, they either don't have enough line to get off the stairs, or they're snagging and catching on the way down. So, taking, like we said before, take a little extra time, preload that room, and then, you can descend the stairs all in one fell swoop, flow as you go, and then get to the bottom and still have some working line at the bottom even. So just take time and preload.
Now, when you're saying that, will you maybe use the top wall or the door, however, it's depending how it swings, as a shield? As long as you don't have like visible fire at the bottom of the stairs, you'll like send a bite over itself down the stairwell, and then cross over. Or I've seen some people even use the line you push down there ahead of you, kind of slide it down to get on the steps or off the steps.
Yeah.
Quick as possible. Is that what you're saying when you're talking about preloading basements?
Yeah, and not to make a plug, but that's one of the things we teach in our engine ops class. But yeah, if the hose line's not going to be compromised by pushing a loop of it down the stairwell, if you can get that loop down to the bottom before you descend, by the time you get to the bottom, you've got all that length to work with. So you can even make a room or two past the bottom of the stairwell. If it's nasty, throw a loop against the wall upstairs. But take some time to preload.
We kind of missed a very important part. I feel we got several of them on here, so we'll kind of start with Kelly Foster, one of our other instructors. As company officers, what are you guys doing when you guys pull up and you're doing your size up? Whether for sure it's a basement fire, or just your regular house fire you're pulling up to. You guys do something different for size ups and 360s for basement fires, or what do you got for the company officers or the aspiring company officers out there? You're there, guys? You want to take it, guys, or Kelly? Got a bunch
I don't see Kelly. I don't know if he had to go on a run or what.
Oh, okay. Guys, you want to hit us up? You've done some teaching for us.
Yeah, I'm not. We're not doing anything, I think, really different for basements other than, your size up when you're first sizing up the building, coming around, see what you got and see what your access is. See if you can soften it from the outside before you're going in. But just that, I feel like people anymore are pretty good about getting a good 360, but just can't understate the importance of getting a 360, making sure that gets done, get all the way around, see what kind of windows you got if you do have anything, and see where the conditions are. Try to locate, see the fire before it even make access. Obviously, that's going to affect my decision making as far as which way we go. like I think Gary was saying, so many of our houses have walkouts. We're in a hilly part of town, so most of our houses have walkouts, and that just makes it, you know, a little bit easier as far as having that option as far as making access to the basement once we recognize that's where it is. But the importance of just making sure the 360 gets done in case, you know, as you roll up, something else is going on and someone gets your attention, not shorten yourself of that, and get the most information you have before you start to formulate your plan.
Now I'll kind of add on here what Geis is talking about with getting the 360 is very, very important. We kind of started practicing here too for your back steppers, stretching the line to make sure you hit home with them on, you know, not always charging it right away at that front door in case you do have to redeploy or anything like that. It still gets charged in a timely fashion, but just kind of really, for people riding backstep, paying close attention to what's going on too. Your job is a lot more than just making that initial stretch, but your officer's doing the 360 and really kind of paying attention and anticipating, hey, I might wind up going to the basement, because we've had a few of those here where you step off and it looks, you know, you might have something from the front door, but that's just everything coming up that stairwell, and the officer runs around back real quick and sees, and you're redeploying lines and everything like that. So just really kind of slowing down and not getting in that huge rush right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback off what you guys are saying, and, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's the way we do it in St. Louis. We pull past, so the leadoff guys, the captains, everyone should see three sides of the building of the first arriving company if they're dressed and paying attention to what's going on. It's been a minute, but the captains I had before I went over to the squad, they would always do a 360 all the time. And one of them teaches for us, Captain Corson, and he would always, they'd either kick in the basement door or force the basement door real quick, or if that looked pretty secure or there wasn't one, they would actually break a window around the back of the house. And you know, you can preach flow path and all that, and we know we're not supposed to do that, but generally basement windows are pretty small, and I guess the risk of creating a flow path through that tiny window in the back of the house isn't a big deal for us, as opposed to not knowing it's a basement fire and putting, you know, 4 or 8, you know, 10, 12 people over that basement fire searching for a fire that's really underneath us. So that's kind of what was taught to me through my captains. You know, Tim came from similar parts of the city. Maybe he'll have something different to add, but I'm obviously not a captain, so I can't tell you what I would do. But what was taught to me is if you're doing a 360, pop a window, open the back door, at least make sure you're not crawling over fire and stretching to the wrong place. You don't have to open up all the doors in the back or everything. Just do enough to make sure you're not crawling over fire. For us anyway, generally the hook and ladder are 2 guys from the squad. When they get there, we'll open up the back of the building. So, yeah, that's that. Tim, you got anything to add?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
I know me and you have talked about it a little bit, and I've seen it a few times, but I guess this really applies to the first thing company, or one of the first few arriving companies before the thermal layering gets all messed up. If you pull up and you force the front door and you can put your head down to the ground and you can still see, you know, whatever it is, 6 to 8 inches or a foot, it's probably going to end up being a fire on the first floor. If for some reason the smoke is banked all the way down to the floor and you can't see anything, and I actually remember one where I turned and looked to the right or the left and I had smoke chugging out of a floor vent that was right there, smoke all the way down to the ground, couldn't see anything. That ended up being a basement fire. So if the smoke is coming up from underneath where you're at, it makes sense that there's the the air gap or the thermal airing is going to be down in the basement. You should be able to go to the basement, put your face on the floor, and be able to see underneath all that and figure out what's going on. So just paying attention to the conditions when you arrive, as far as the thermal airing and what you're showing, so forth, so on. Another good indicator. Anybody have any questions about that?
You were a bit broken up, Tim. I think it was readable.
Is Tim drinking?
Oh, he's drinking, but I think they did say there would be bandwidth problems. So what he's saying is kind of we teach it all in all our classes and learn it from, who knows, old school guys on our job. But
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But you stick your head down to the ground before you.
Yeah, that's not the point.
You there? Stick your head down to the ground and you can kind of get a layout. If you do that on the first floor and there's no lift or anything, chances are that deep-seated fire is in the basement. So he's saying reading the smoke can give you a pretty good idea of if it's a first floor fire, basement fire, or top floor fire. So there's quite a bit.
Jeff, one other thing real quick also, for guys that are seeing more new construction, we actually had a company that was out, new house being built, and they went out and kind of did a walkthrough of it. We actually found a house within our district that they're building that are the prefabbed OSB stairwell stringers. So they're becoming more and more common and popular. And it was one of those things we'd never seen before. And all of a sudden there they are. So luckily somebody was paying attention, but again, if you have those and they're not protected from the bottom side and you have a basement fire, the stairs will probably be gone before you get there. So just kind of something to keep in mind on a new construction coming through the first floor, going down the stairs.
Something else along those lines. I know I've got several structures in my district, but has anybody messed with the structures that are the ICF, insulated concrete forms? Has anybody done anything in any of those?
So
we've got a couple of them, but nothing that we've done any type of a training or we've had an incident in them.
So I've never had a fire in them, but we were there when they were building a ton of them by the 17s. All the HUD homes in that area were building them all with the foundations and all that. And same thing Gary was talking about with the OSB stairs unprotected. We kind of had a plan because we were in them when they were building them. They did put the escape windows in there with the hatch. It's a full-size window that comes out into like a protected area underground with a little ladder. So we knew if we ever had a fire in one of those in the basement, we were going to just go to that exterior hatch, force the gate that protects it, go down there into the window, into the bedroom, and fight the fire from there instead of putting us over those OSB stairs. But no, I haven't had a fire in them, but it is people do need to be aware of them. It's basically a modular foundation with insulation and about an inch of concrete on each side, and then the ones we saw had a steel or metal studs on the inside in case they decided to finish the basement at a later time or whatever. But they're out there, and they're apparently cheaper and easier to use. So chances are we're going to be seeing more and more of them. And eventually they're going to get old and we're going to be fighting fires in those type of buildings. So before we get going on to the next subjects, we do have some rural guys on here. So I see the guys from DeSoto, Kona's and them, and Sullivan, they can't talk to us. Anybody else from the more rural departments want to speak up, tell us, are you guys doing anything different? The majority of the engine house guys on here are all from more suburban type departments. So you guys want to add anything to the conversation today?
I think for my guys, like Geis and Graf mentioned, I probably 99% of the basement in my rural area are walkout. We have a very hilly, pretty rocky soil in my area. So, like we're essentially doing first floor attacks through the walkout doors in the back. That's probably going to be the vast majority of ours. So as far as, stretching down staircases, as a sole access to the basement, it's a little bit of a lost art for my dudes.
Makes sense. Anyone out there dealing with a cellars, where there's no access from the inside? I know we have a handful of old taxpayer type buildings that the only way to get to the basement is cellars. Anyone dealing with a ton of fires in those type of buildings? I see there's some Indianapolis guys, I think. Torres, you dealing with any cellar fires? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you unmuted me. Cool. No, I can't say that I have. I know they exist by us. There's not a ton. We have problems. I know in certain areas, common basements. That makes sense. Like a strip mall, will share a basement that goes a city block long, or 2 city blocks. There's a place on the west side that has a fucking bank, or not a bank, a fucking mall underneath it. Mall. Like, why? And a complete mall underneath. I don't know how many city blocks. It's huge. I didn't think it existed until somebody showed me it. But they've historically had a couple good fires. They used foam, high expansion foam. Am I saying it right? I got some good pictures. I got to dig that stuff up, but I didn't know we were going to talk about that. But that seemed to put it out because you just couldn't chase it down, and it was just way too risky to put a ton of guys in to find a fire that's unknown where it's at, but a good enough volume of it. It just wasn't worth it. Nobody was in there, and it was completely empty. So I can't say that there are cellars, but there are definitely common, I would say common basements. I see in strip malls, buildings, commercial settings. Other than that, not so much other than that.
Yeah, I just think it with limited access. The one I'm thinking of, Tim did a funny. It was just blowing out of the cellar and coal chute, and it was chained shut, but it was so smoky on the street, the saws wouldn't run. So Tim would be in like the fresh air, and he'd rev the saw all the way up at full RPMs and then run into the smoke and try and grind through like, half an inch or whatever. And then the saw would die. Then he'd go back into the smoke. So that was pretty entertaining seeing that. But I just know that the problem with those, it's think kind of storm shelters from Twister is it's very limited access. So you're going in your only ventilation point. So that's where those quote unquote, Jared talked about them earlier, cellar nozzles. Mike, you were talking about the foam, the high expansion foam, which we got a new chemical truck on the way that's going to have a ton of foam and all that. So without getting too crazy into commercial fires and sub basements, we have a lot of sub basements in the West End and downtown, trying to keep this residential. Next challenge, or next question I want to throw back to you, Mike, and I'm sure several other of us will add to it, is what kind of problems would be different with search techniques in basement fires? Where are we going first? What's our priority? Throw that to you.
Yes, now with trying times, since all this stuff's going down, I was just talking to a bunch of guys. We're thinking about it, like buildings we once thought were either limited or not, occupied by a ton of people. Either they had work or whatever was going on. Now that people are stacked, they're on top of each other. And when it comes to searching, especially in a basement, I don't know, it's so compartmentalized. I would find it difficult. Believe it or not, I haven't had a ton of basement fires. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. But I've had a few, and it seems to be even doing a search. They got 4 or 5 bedrooms, 5, more, maybe a bathroom, and they have stuff cluttered, thrown in there. You have your utilities down there, what have you not. So just trying to navigate through there. They're low ceilings, they're not high. I don't know how it is by everywhere else. I'm talking our normal, Chicago bungalows, story and a half, 2-story raised ranch, what have you, that are on slabs. The ceiling sucks, and it's a tight space. The furnace is down there, the boiler. So doing a search, I'm thinking it's going to be fast, quick. Get a truck company as fast as you can. I understand minimum manpower sucks for everybody. I understand that. It's not something I'm unfamiliar with. None of us are. So you're going to have to use that manpower wisely. That truck officer or engine officer, rig officer needs to wear out those boots, get down ahead and find out what's going on. They need to be feet in front of everybody to get out, ahead of the game to say, hey, look, it's in the basement. It has a bunch of rooms, so on and so forth. This is what we need to do. It's a game plan. But it's gonna be difficult. I'm not saying a basement's just gonna be easy, especially if it's not a walkout and you're going down those interior stairwell. That old wife's tale gets better when you get down there. Bullshit. It doesn't. It's shitty no matter what you do. So just get down as fast as you can with a line, and if you have to break off, you're gonna do it with 1-2 people, and normally attack it any other way unless somebody else has another way of doing it. I still do my whole triangle thing. It's a little different when I come to a room, but that's just how I do business. Everyone else has their own little way. I want in and out of that place as fast as possible. Nothing's changed, especially for primary. Nothing's changed.
Shameless plug. We got a podcast out there about truck company ops, search and rescue, where Taurus explains all that.
I do have a tick now. I bought my own personal tick. I know it's real nerdy on me, but that's just who I am. I don't rely on it. It's just a tool, but I do turn it on, and it's picked up. When it comes to stuff like that, all basement or just an area I'm not sure with, I use my tick. I have a tick now, which is super awesome. Only our company officers have ticks. Squads have 2 ticks. Inexpensive. It didn't cost me anything. I would have wasted it on doing something else. Why not? So I purchased one, and that definitely helped out a ton. If I'm a little turned around, quick, boom, it's on one of those keepers, boom, move, keep going. That's just a personal thing. I definitely stepped up my game with searching. I just want to be able to have something to aid me in case A, I need it, or B, I need to get out, but I have it. I'm not saying everyone go out and buy one. I'm a nerd, so I'm weird like that.
Yeah, on our job they call us fire fruits, and I've long accepted long ago that I'm a fire fruit. So welcome to the club, brother.
On the tick discussion, it's interesting hearing that side of it, because Kyle, I don't know if you want to comment on this, if it's happened at Metro too, but we actually had a training, is actually our last organized training before the virus ended it all. But we were just doing basic search, because we do have two ticks on every truck, and we've got some guys that have never done search without ticks, and so they're literally staring at a tick, trying to search. They can't see anything around them other than that tick screen. And we had a couple fires. My crew had a couple fires. We were assigned primary search, and I was not happy with how it went, because we were just not efficient enough, because people were just so staring at the ticks. They couldn't sweep and move and just do an old fashioned search like I was first taught when I got into this, because they've only known a time with ticks. They never had to do it without a tick. And so we did a kind of a back to basics training, and we got really good feedback about that, just because in our world we have so many guys that we do have ticks, fortunately, but this is it's kind of funny, a lot of guys don't have them. They're like, that'd be nice to have it. We've got them, and now we're losing that great skill of how to do a search.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's why I just got back from from teaching at the fire academy, and that's why we hit all the regular room-oriented search techniques, for weeks and weeks and weeks before we ever show them a tick, because batteries run out and it's technology, and when you need it most, don't count on that working. And if you're not good with the fundamentals of doing the triangle method that Torres talks about, or counting corners, or just a general room oriented search without a hose line, and that tick goes down, and that's your crutch or your training wheel, so to speak, you're not going to be very efficient at getting in there and and finding, searching for civilians, trapped civilians. It's definitely Taurus is holding up. Someone asked what tick he went with. It looks like it was a FLIR XR. Some people ask. We got a chat going on. Tim, thanks for throwing that up there. I was thinking that when he was saying that. We had one thing I also want to say about the ticks is, to kind of tie into where I was going with the original question I asked for Mike, is I had several fires over the course of my career, several in a row. One of them was where I was making fun of Tim for that cellar fire. They were going to fire in the cellar in the first floor. I was searching the apartments above them. It was a taxpayer, and it was so smoky crawling down the hallway to get to the apartments. When I put the tick to my face, I couldn't see the screen, and it was pressed up all the way against my mask. That's happened to me several fires. It's not every fire. It's sometimes. Traditionally, it's when you're in that smoke and there's no fire in your area, so you're just basically in all that unburned fuel, and it's so smoky up there before other guys get it open up that you put that tick screen to your face and you can't see it. So if your only way of going through burning buildings is staring at that piece of technology that could die or break, or you could lose it, those little retractor clips break off, you need to get back to the basics. It sounds like you guys were doing that, Tim. That's good to hear.
Hey, Tim, question for Tim Geis. If you guys are still running over there, every spot has a camera on it?
If we're rolling 4 on the truck, we don't, but that hasn't happened. And since we went down one town and country, so usually it's officer and backstep both have one though. But that's also, like Jeff was saying, assume the last guy put it on the charger, assume the last guy didn't leave it on, assume that they didn't forget to grab it off the truck when they're stepping on. And that's, it's one of the dynamics we deal with. Yeah, I'll be the first to admit we don't run much fire. And so you've got guys that it's not, and then or you get a guy swung on from a box and they're never on. And so they're panicking, just trying to, it's just a dynamic. We've had a huge turnover. So we got a lot of young guys that when they do get on the truck, I'm going through kind of checklists as we're going down. I'm kind of telling expectations of what I want them to grab, but that's not one of the things I'm mentioning. I assume that they're going to grab that, and that's what happened in one fire we had. We got in to do the search, and it was bank floor to ceiling, and I had a tick, he didn't, and it took way too long with him trying to keep up with me because he couldn't see shit, and I was going with the tick, and it just I wish I just set the tick down and we just did get low and sweep and just move fast, because like it took way longer than it should have. And that was kind of what prompted. We were already getting into that evolution of training, and I threw that out to our training officer. I'm like, we really need to work on this, because it's just like Jeff was talking about, counting corners, stuff like that. Like we've got so many guys who've gotten in this so recently that like I've got to go back to basics with stuff like that, as far as like just stop them in the middle of like a search drill and be like, where are you? Describe to me where in the building you are. And I guarantee a lot of them, or even just watching when I, instruct for our training at work, and I have the fortunate, I get to see everybody else do it. And people get spun around pretty quickly in small spaces. We didn't have that big of a big room set up, and people were getting spun around just because they weren't keeping track of walls. They're getting off walls and just not following basics, basically.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've started training on here. We've got our officers all have cameras. A lot of our trucks, you might have a spare one that they'll throw on the back step. I've kind of limited myself for my back step days on if I grab it or not, kind of depending on what I'm getting into. Usually my officer's pretty good at getting it. It's more of we've really adjusted away from them with some of our in-house training of use it to take that quick look and then put it back down while you're doing your search type of stuff like that. And really just hitting back to the basics, because a lot of the stuff I found with cameras, and especially the newer guys coming on, if you don't train with them all the time to really know what you're looking at, and the refresh times and all that stuff really has a huge play in it that I found, especially some of the stuff at the academy, whenever you start talking up there to these brand new kids coming on of the cameras, and they're flying through and they might miss half the room, or they don't understand exactly what they're looking for, the different colors of gray and stuff like that, depending on what kind of camera they have. So ours here, bordering you guys, we've just really kind of tried to push back to the basics on a lot of our guys and take that quick look. It's an awesome tool to have, but train more on not having it, because like ours for a while is one of those, every time you come in, the battery would be dead, or you get it off and you get 5 feet in the door and the battery would die, and well, shit, now I've got to go back to old school because I'm not going to run out and try to find a new battery before I go find this fire or do a search. So that's a lot of ours, just been training. And then when we do train, Jeff drug me along to a class years ago where they actually made us put a pillowcase over our head, and they promised me I wouldn't get in trouble whenever they walked me into this classroom. But you had to use the camera using this pillowcase over your head to find your chair and find stuff in the room, and that just took away all your peripherals, just like you would be in a fire. Because a lot of our guys, when they train on this, it's in a wide open room, and what do? They turn the lights off, and you just kind of use the camera to look around the room. But taking your peripherals away kind of goes back to what Jeff said. The one day he had a fire and he had to have it up against his face to even try to see anything. So they're not always going to work. It's a nice tool to have in your toolbox, but you got to go back to the basics with a lot of this stuff and always have that fundamental skills down.
Well, and then like Jeff was saying earlier, like I've had situations where I can't see shit through it, and ours are so high definition now that when I do want to use it, I'm so used to it being tack sharp. And so when it is completely obscured, then your eyes are adjusted to that tick screen, and you're trying to see ambient light, catch whatever ambient outlines you can, and it just kind of fucks your eyes at that point, and it makes it even more difficult.
I would add, three things. So, if you're in Missouri, and I believe they do it at fire school through MU, but Chad Daly and Matt Black and the dudes from O'Byrne are the ones that taught that tick class that Kyle and I went to. It's hands down, I learned more in one afternoon with them guys than I knew pretty much my whole career up until that point. So, shameless plug for them. If you're in Missouri or you want to go to fire school, or reach out to Chad, man, that are Kansas City Rescue 9. They're very heavily involved on Facebook. He'll steer you in the right direction for that tick class. But big thing that comes down to, we train with the ticks, not under cool conditions, under, theatrical smoke. And believe me, it's great for training. It's great for training new firefighters, smoke machines and stuff. But to be proficient at using ticks, you need to get in and look at the screen under high heat, because, if everything's superheated in the room, the coloring difference, the way it looks, the way stairs look, the way walls look, furniture looks, a victim looks compared to the fire in a hot environment is different than how we usually train our people. So pay attention to what you're doing there. To kind of reiterate what Kyle said, if I look at that tick screen for 15 seconds, a minute, that's a lot. I basically just use it, coming into a new room to see doorways, make sure a room doesn't go off, another room doesn't go off that room. And then it's hanging down on the little keeper like Torres was talking about. And I do my regular search, and I'll come back to it if I think conditions are changing, or, I'm going to change into another room. I kind of use it just to get a mental roadmap, and then I put it back down and go to, my normal room-oriented search. I did want to say, and what I was alluding to when I originally brought up the search question to Torres, is right now, people are home, so we need to treat every fire like it's occupied. I know in St. Louis, we do that anyway. We may use the term vacant, but we're still going in on the radio, but we're still going in and doing our primary and secondary searches. Things I want to point out, not a big deal now, but like out where I live in the suburbs, they're only building large ranches and storing halves for the most part. So if you get a good basement fire, we need to get to those bedrooms above that basement fire, because that's going to be one of the most dangerous places on the fire ground, in my opinion. Really, where Tim and I work, and I'm sure Mike's the same way, people are stacked up everywhere, from bedrooms being what used to be dining rooms to living rooms. People are sleeping in living rooms and stuff. So if we get a good basement fire cooking in one of those houses, even though it's 2-story and you would assume all the bedrooms are on the second floor, we need our priority needs to be getting above that fire and searching that first floor and making sure there's not bedrooms converted. And you're going to run into, think of where people put all their shit. It's in the basement. That's where all the storage rooms are. That's where a lot of workshops are, and a lot of bedrooms. People build bedrooms all the time that are against code, and their only way out's that tiny 3x3 window, if you're lucky. So we need to prioritize and get in there and search those areas as aggressive as possible. So last subject I want to talk about, throw this back to Torres, and then we'll see if we have any questions and kind of start wrapping up, is let's talk about ventilation challenges with basement fires.
Ventilation with basement fires. My biggest worry with those basement fires is you got to learn and understand building construction to really understand if what's in the basement. Smoke coming from the chimney, that kind of deal. We usually, the glass block windows, those are good enough. Hydraulic ventilation, we do a lot of fogging. Our engine companies, they love it. It's just the thing they do. And but getting some roof work in on that. If it runs those pipe chases, we got a problem. Balloon frame construction, we got a problem. We have a lot of those buildings. Polish battleships, what we traditionally call them, they're huge, 3-story, 2-story, 3-story frame, balloon frame usually. And those things just travel and go right up from the basement straight on up. And then we have an issue. And it's, a 12-12 pitch. I mean, they're ridiculous. They suck. And we love the Milwaukee method. We love the 2 ladders. We love it. It's phenomenal. That's just the way to go with the venting, in my opinion. People have I'm still a basher. I like to just pound on the roof, but everyone has their own. But once again, we're all different. We're all going to have different tactics. Our SOPs are going to dictate everything else. I understand manpower is really a bad thing with everybody. And now these days it's getting worse. So I've been just taking myself out of my realm and going into your realm and others' realms of manpower. I truly think searching a good search should take preference. People are saying, should I fucking vent? Should I search? What am I doing? I only have like 3 guys. Well, you know what? I think a good hard search, put the fire out, get water on the fire. Let's call it a day. There's just sometimes you don't get to the roof. I love going to the roof, but I like going to the rear. We have a position where we go to the rear on the truck. I love getting to that back door and walk-out basement. That's just a place to be, because a good engine company, anybody, they're going to get water on that fire quick. Unless it's, it's a decent hard fire. That's a whole other story. But venting with basement fires, I think just getting the glass block windows out, the guys do a great job fogging it out. Unless it's a different kind of, your building construction is always going to, like I said, dictate things. That's the only time I really have to worry about that. If it just ran up, got into the cock loft, or not cock loft, I apologize, that's for flat roofs. But that's a whole nother realm. I'm going to skip that. But the pipe chasing and balloon frame construction, I think you guys, in St. Louis, you guys got some old ass buildings too. So we're kind of in trouble. I really don't see too much new construction with us. And if it is platform, it's, traditional lumber. I rarely see lightweight construction. There's some on the west side. I'm not going to deny that. I had a couple fires working for guys over there as many moons ago, but traditionally it's our bread and butter is our ordinary frames, old construction. Unless they take it and they go, oh, I like an open floor plan, so they put trusses in. Other than that, I don't see it too often. I'm sure will things change? Absolutely. But when it comes to venting, like I said, an engine company fogging out is going to be the winning tickets. Class and what have you. Only time like I say, anything changes is if the building construction dictates that, or you see something coming up that dictates something different. Smoke from the chimney, you don't see it coming from anywhere else. It's coming out of the eaves. Let's figure that out. And that comes up to, we don't want to get into venting all day, but knee walls and so on and so forth. That's all kinds of the problems. So I'm sure we don't have time for that.
Yeah, we'll probably come back and do it. I mean, my plan anyway is to do one of these a week,
Yeah.
every 10 days during quarantine live, kind of relaunch our podcast after that.
It'd be nice. You know what? This is for all people that are watching besides us, us operators. I think, we really need some more questions. There are questions out there people aren't asking. Ask the questions. Don't be scared. Ask the question. Just pop up. However this works. I'm still new to this as myself, but type it in, whatever you have to do, and ask a question. This whole thing is just, let's start asking stuff, because it's hard just to be repetitive for all of us doing the same thing over and saying the same thing over and over again. I'd like to have some kind of genuine conversations about stuff that you guys want to know. Let's do it, So.
Yeah, you can post it on Instagram. Schultz runs our Instagram. You can post it on Facebook. There's several of us that have access to Facebook. You can reach
TikTok.
You can reach out to us individually. We even have a comment form on the website. But I will say, we're going to try and pick up our podcast again, and we're going to do these live feed things over the course of however long this shelter in place thing takes. We're not looking to make money or anything, but we just miss getting out and teaching classes and being around people. So same thing. There's a bunch of people on here that have nothing to do with Engine House. And if you guys want to speak, just unmute yourselves and ask the question.
Yeah, unmute and ask something. You know what's going to really suck? Just with this quarantine stuff and just, hey, chill out, Jen. You guys are already short and bad with manpower as it is. If you get some guys that get sick, you're screwed. You're even down more. You guys are at your wit's ends as it was. Let's be honest. If something happens, it's not if, it's when. It's going to happen. You guys are going to get a good fire, and you're going to be short-staffed even more than you are now. It's criminal. I get it. You have to have a plan with this. It's more talking with other communities, other departments around us to go, hey, look, I got 5 guys down. How about you? Yeah, I'm about 4 down, or whatever the case may be. Look, if something pops off, I know we don't talk, and we haven't talked. I don't like your car. Your wife hates my wife. Whatever the case may be, get your shit together and start working together. Otherwise, you're fucked. Let's be honest. You're going to be in trouble. Somebody's going to get hurt. Plain and simple. At these times, we're kind of in trouble, and we really need to figure something out. That's just.
Mike, I say this every class, the guys, you've taught with me, all these other guys that have taught with me. I say this, all these people in these rural spots, Bert, Jared, Hannah, thanks for reaching out. A lot of these other people, DeSoto Rural, there's no doubt in my mind that you guys got to be better firemen than me and Torres and Schultz. And there's a handful of these guys on here, I believe, from Indianapolis as well. We're putting 35 to 45 dudes on scene in 8 minutes. We're so close together that our fire trucks are running into each other going to calls. If I screw up, there's 29 other people there to bail me out, as opposed to a new guy that just graduated the academy that's on Tim and I's shift. He had 6 people at a house fire. He was telling us that was it, including drivers and everything. So the guys and girls that work in these more rural departments have to do a better job of hitting all these things than we do, because you just don't have the people. Generally speaking, our fires, it's one bottle and you have one job for that whole fire. Whether it's you go up to the roof and cut a hole, by the time you get down, everything else is done because there's 30 other people there working. You go in, you do a search, you come out, you're done because all the other guys are there. Whereas, more rural environment, you got to do all this stuff. You may go in on the first in line, come out, do a secondary search, then vent. You got to be more well-rounded in what you do than any of us guys that work for a more busy metropolitan, and even in a lot of cases, you know, St. Louis County, that's the case. These suburban fire departments, they're putting 20, 30 guys on the scene or girls on the scene in, you know, 10 minutes. So keep that in mind when you're out there training. And with that, you know, I kind of want to run through everyone. Jared, from a more rural environment, you have anything to add as far as ventilation at basement fires?
Ventilation of basement fires?
That must have been a hell of a fire you guys just had.
Yeah, well, it was toned out as a post office, and then it turns out it was just an outbuilding behind the post office. Words matter, I guess. I don't know. I don't know where you were before, but for us, obviously, daylight windows, walkouts, we're pretty fortunate to have walkouts. I kind of look at walkout basements as having the ability to do vertical ventilation, really. You know, nothing says, if it's cooking off and you need to vent it, nothing says you can't cut a hole in the floor of Division 1 and let that thing belch out that way. It works the same as vertical ventilation. You know, you open Division 1 up and then belch it out. You're going to have a hose line in place, you know, which would be the equivalent of an exposure line, I guess you could say. But don't be afraid to cut a hole in that floor and belch it out the top.
Somebody was asking, and I've only seen this done on like a RIT type environment. Has anyone ever cut a hole in the first floor to facilitate basement ventilation? I never have.
No.
I mean, I've seen it done and heard of it done. Doing a first floor cutout for like a trapped fireman to get a trapped fireman out of the basement.
We've seen that. Yeah, we've seen the same thing like you just said. It was sort of trapped fireman. I've seen getting a hole to put a nozzle down, not the cellar nozzle, but some kind of pipe down there. This is like we're at our wits' end kind of thing. It's not tactic A. This isn't like, hey, step A, cut a hole in the floor. That's not how that goes. It's an option. Once again, maybe you look at your manpower. Maybe that is an option A. I don't know. But I do recommend anytime you enter a threshold that you're unsure if it's a basement or not, take a tool, pop it right inside the doorway, see if it is something that's lower than you. You know what I mean? Make sure you do have full ground. That's, like I said, that's just a personal thing I do. But I've never seen anything like that. I've popped at open floors to get water to go down. I've seen twice we actually had to because it was running it was in a school, a public school, and it was running in between. It was weird. There were void spaces from the floors, like, you know, the joists, but floor rafters or floor joists running the classroom, and it was in the floor. So that would have had to been the only time we did anything that was like that. Very few residentials that we did something like that, but we usually interior stairwell, boom, unless something really bad happens. Where there have been guys that, you know, their foot goes through the floor, a guy goes through the floor, but they're self-rescued or we get him out, no problem, he's fine. You know what I mean? But I don't think that's like a step A. That's not a plan A. That's more of a plan F. Like, fuck, you know, I'm out of options. Let's do that, you know. But I wouldn't, unless, like I said, once again, manpower going to dictate, situational. That's just my opinion. I'm all open to new ideas now. I don't know what happened, but I'm open to anything that'll keep you guys. And if you got two guys on that rig and that's all you got for the next 10 minutes, you know, fuck it, you know, pull those boots up and figure something out. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes you just got to do what you need to do. You know what I mean?
No, Mike, you're exactly right. It's definitely not a plan A.
Hey, Jeff.
I think, you know, just making the push like normal. If you can't break the threshold, like you said, let the hose do its work. Let the reach of that stream do its work. Cool those gases, you know, get them to shrink. Let the steam do some work. Yeah, you're right. There's lots of other options. Typical ventilation, and not to get into the studies or any of that stuff, because that could be hours and hours, but every opening is a bidirectional movement of air, right? So air goes in low, pushes hot gas out high. nothing says that that itself isn't the ventilation that you're getting. That may be all you get.
Yeah, Jonesy, Schultz, did you have something real quick?
Yeah, I think again, our show was not working, but that big warehouse fire we had in the city, that's probably been at least a year ago now. It was a big timber frame warehouse that they had tons of problems with, and the fire actually originated in the basement. And I do remember talking to a few guys where they tried cutting holes in the floor, but kind of like Mike said, that ended up being a plan F, and things did maybe progressed to a point where it was a little too late. And the one big
You
problem
you sound terrible, Tim.
there was having saws that run. Sorry about that. Having saws that run in those smoky conditions. So when you're cutting a vent hole on the floor and things have already progressed to a point where it's a little too late, you consider that, because having saws running.
Tim, I think your neighborhood has a bandwidth problem.
It's hard to it's incredibly hard to hear you, Tim.
Yeah, you need to move to Jefferson County, but
Hey, real quick, I'm scrolling at these messages. Hannah, I've never met you. I apologize. You said something. Manpower keeps popping up in the conversation. It's interesting to train as if you have the manpower when realistically we don't. I don't know how you guys are doing it. I know if we can and we have the time, if when we were doing classes, when stuff was going on, I think truly the best way to teach our guys is realistically, the book is wrong. That book is, I know, I understand we need it for certain things, but man, has this book been so wrong for so long? Yes. I can't fucking take it. They're teaching you how to throw ladders with people, how to search with 4 or 5 people. That's not realistic. It's bullshit. It's like the blue or the red pill. Ooh. Tim, are you trying to talk? Because I can't hear you, buddy. we need to realistically, if we can, when this all goes away and we're all back to normal business as usual, when we start teaching again, if we can put everybody, even you guys, wherever you're at, anyone out there, do a search with 2 people. Let's be realistic. Let's throw that ladder with 2 people, and stop with the, that's not what we're supposed to do. Well, that's what you got. And that's realistically. Stop. Grow up. That's what you have. Let's deal with it. I just wanted to touch on that. I'm sorry, Tim. I kind of gone off on a tangent when you were all, bandwidth is all screwed up.
I was setting this up. They said there might be a bandwidth problem. I unmuted Hannah, although she muted herself, and I asked her to start a conversation so we could pick her brain a little bit. But we'll work on her for next time. I guess maybe she doesn't want to talk. So she
I want to add.
I saw her for a second, real quick before you jump in, Kyle. Hold that thing. Jonesy, do you want to talk? You have experience with cutting the floor, and I'm going to unmute you. Feel free. You don't have to talk, but you did.
Hannah's there.
You did make a good point about if you're going to cut the floor, go ahead and cut where there's already like a AC vent or heat duct, HVAC type connection. It'd be easier to get through, and there's already a pre-established hole to start. So, Jonesy, you want to add your experience with that, or are you
not a whole lot of experience? Yeah, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we're hearing you. Where are you from, man?
All it is you've got to watch out for that 2x6. It's along the floors. So if you go a long vent hole, almost like a trench cut underneath that one window that you want to vent anything out of, sometimes the air will come out of that area. You can have a vent window and you've got your AC heating vent right underneath that one window that you want to go to. So removing smoke from a basement can be very challenging if there's no other access. And we have a lot of that in my area, which is up north in Canada, that a lot of them are basement apartments. So each one of them are segregated. So you can't gain access to a lot of them. So just venting out the windows that you can, not always an option.
Jonesy, I'll ask you this, man. Thanks for speaking. Are you guys using fans up there? Positive pressure fans? Would you use them in this situation, or?
You mean a positive pressure attack type of thing?
Just we use fans on my department, but it's traditionally in the positive pressure ventilation. We've already put the fire out. We got it opened up. We're hydraulically ventilating. We know there's not hidden fire. We don't use fans before we put guys in there. A lot of times it's in conjunction to hydraulic ventilation, as Torres was talking about, and vertical and horizontal vent has already been done. And then we'll put the fans in to help speed things along, or to pressurize a basement, as you're speaking about, and get that smoke there.
For our pressurization, we put it at the front door, and if hopefully it'll get to the basement access. But a lot of the times we're putting more CO into that building than anything. So if you've got a multiple family dwelling, then you're putting a lot of CO in those buildings just from these fans if you don't have the right setup system. So yeah, hydraulic ventilation is good, and positive pressure is not always the best because of where it is, the basement access. You've got to put them at the door. So sometimes we've got negative pressure fans that we'll kind of use in reverse. We'll put them inside with a line, like a landline from the actual truck, and use it that way. So you're not pumping in CO or electric, or almost like an electric fan.
Jonesy, one of the things that we've done, it's kind of backwards. We actually use the mechanical fan. We'll put it inside the building. Just for that CO thing that you were talking about, we did a test in the station itself, did CO readings of doing it conventionally, and then put the fan inside the building, and we got just as good ventilation with it inside the building, but we eliminated the CO. So it seems counterintuitive to put the exhaust and the motor inside the building, but it actually worked because it was pulling fresh air and pushing the nasty stuff out.
That's a great idea.
So I guess my question with the fans is that CO from the fan can't be any worse than the smoke from the fire, right? So like I get for dry cooking and all that, and we have the electric, and even now, like our squatty, we even have one of the battery powered ones that I think all companies are going to get as we phase out our apparatus. So that's no big deal, but is the fan putting in so much CO2 or CO, excuse me, that it's more than what the fire did if we didn't clear that smoke?
No, you're right there. So getting the smoke out is one thing, but then the remaining CO, it's getting that out. When we remove the smoke, it's a small lingering breeze that's going through the house, and so to naturally ventilate it, you're going to be a while before that naturally ventilates as well. So it's getting the negative pressure. I like that idea of putting everything else inside.
Yeah, and that's where it was for us. It wasn't if you're talking a ripping house fire, naturally you're not going to do any more damage. So do what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But the little stovetop fires, the burn up belts on heaters and furnaces, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Well, and admittedly, and I think we're heading in that direction, but we're not to the point where we're running our 5 gas meters on fires. I mean, I'm sure we will before long, but you guys that know that once you start doing that, you're going to go through filters and all that stuff a lot quicker rate, and all that costs money. So we're just not to that point yet. And I had admittedly never taken a CO reading at a fire, with the fan running. So I appreciate you guys answering those questions.
Thanks, man.
Hey, Hannah, you feel like talking? You feel like saying something? I know you've come and gone. You're unmute. There she is.
Yeah. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're putting you on the spot. So go ahead and ask your question or whatever you got to say.
Hey, really not a whole lot to add. Pretty new to the fire service, but I definitely appreciate I've done a few ride-alongs in St. Louis and know a lot of people, had a lot of great conversations. Definitely appreciate having aggressive firefighting tactics. I think that's probably the safest way to do things. Here at Engine or Station 1, we run a 4-man crew and we're fully staffed, 3-man at Station 2. That's 7 people. That's our entire shift. So, you're talking about a guy on your shift who has structure fires with 6 people. That's me. That's where we're at. But I find ourselves training to throw ladders 2-man and doing 3-man VES when we've got 7 people. So it seems a little unrealistic, and it's just some of the difficulties I've encountered as a new firefighter. It's trying to, do what I need to be doing, do the job, listen to my superiors, but also, not let people die.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, earlier, you got to be better than all us guys at bigger fire departments, because if you rode in St. Louis, I don't know where you rode in St. Louis, but our engine house Tim and I work at, there's 10 people there every day. So
Yeah.
that's more than your whole shift. So,
Yes.
and Mike Torres talked about it, but you got to get really, really good throwing 24-foot ladders by yourself and
Yes.
moving hose lines with 2 people, because that's what you're going to have: 2 on a hose line, 2 doing search, and 1 doing outside work, throwing a couple drivers. That's what you got.
Mm-hmm.
So train that way. It's unfortunate, as Mikey was saying, that the books are illustrated in a way that, you got to have 4 people to throw a 35-foot ladder. And most of us that have done any type of training or worked in a rural environment know that's bullshit. So, you got to be able to get it done with 2. But, hey, I appreciate you coming on and willing to talk and ask the questions. And if anything comes up or you have an idea for a subject, same thing with Jonesy or Sparks or anyone else that's not talking, post it on the Facebook page or let us know, because as soon as we hang up here, I'm going to text with these guys from Engine House, and we're going to try and do this next week. I think it was a good way to pass the time when we're all stuck indoors, so we just need some subjects and we'll get it going. We'll relaunch our podcast from here. So, you got anything else to add, Hannah?
I don't. I just appreciate you guys, doing stuff like this and just having conversations. That's how you learn.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. All right, Sanders, did you have something, brother?
Yeah, you shushed me, so I kind of forgot already. But I think she rode on Squad 1. Probably is wherever she rode at.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake. If she rode on Squad 1, that's a huge mistake on her.
Yeah. I think you meant to say squad.
So, okay, I rode 4 times. I did ride Squad 1 C shift, the first one. I rode 28s, 29, Squad 2, and then the last one was 26 with Vinny and Dave Ray.
Oh, well, at least it sounds like you rode the C shift a bunch, which is Tim and I's shift, so that's good for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, you wouldn't have known you were down at the academy.
I probably.
Yeah. No, I was going to add kind of Torres, and you just hit on it here a second ago with Hannah, with just training realistically. And that's one of the biggest things. You go to some of these places, and even at the academy, and when we train, it's like nails on a chalkboard, man. You show up, and you've got 2 or 3 companies there, and they're going to send in a search. Well, they've got 5 guys going in searching rooms. Like, that's not realistic at all. Or throwing ladders, like you hit on, everybody should be able to throw a 24-foot ladder. The technique and just getting it down. But one of the things Gary and myself did at the late class, when they gave us the whole mansion to train in, of doing searches, and instead of, because we've all done it before, like, oh, well, here's this little baby doll we just picked up at the Walmarts, go in and search for it. But make them train realistically and put one of us in there as a victim and make them go in there. And you want to see the shock on some guy's face when they show up and they have a real life victim, either conscious or awake, and they're having to deal with a real life victim whenever they come in and do a search. And we've kind of stepped that up. I've started doing it at the academy some of the days I'm up there doing search classes. And it just really an eye opener. I've noticed for a lot of people when you step it up and do this more realistic stuff instead of going in, they're going like, well, we didn't find anybody. Well, you're not always going to find a victim, or they go in expecting to find this little baby doll that you just picked up at the store. And now it's turned into, oh shit, I didn't realize I was searching for a grown man. Well, what did you expect to find? Stuff like that. And that's, I've really noticed just stepping up certain things where you can to get away from the book and not holding ankles and not doing all this book shit that they always teach everybody, and trying to get more realistic. I mean, because manpower, I mean, I'm lucky where I'm at. I always roll out with 3 guys on the truck, and hopefully our ambulance is in quarters and give us 5 guys. But there's districts around us that still show up with 2 guys on the truck whenever they get there. So,
Kyle, one thing that I do want to add to that real quick, the search, you brought it up with the search, and that's something that's become very near and dear to me. And if you've taken our class, truck class recently, you'll understand it, but get out of bunkers. When we're searching, typically what do? We rescue each other. Well, we stay in our bunker boots, we stay in our bunker pants, stuff like that. Stop doing that. We're doing ourselves a disservice. So go get on some carpet, something that's going to, create a lot of resistance when you drag. Get down to your shorts. That's it. Don't wear socks. Don't wear anything. Don't give guys the ability to lock a boot in their armpit or to grab a hold of some pants. Stop doing that. Practice realistic. Victims do not wear bunker pants and bunker boots. They don't wear DRD devices. So we've got to get out of that habit of, okay, well, it's my turn to be the victim. I'm just going to go lay down in a corner with my bunkers on. We gotta quit doing that.
fat, slick, wet, naked is how everybody is. So that, and then the other thing of actually dragging the victim all the way outside. Like when we did the Lake Ozark class, that was one of the biggest things. We were doing a BES station, and they had to go in and find a live victim. And if they found a live victim, they had to bring them down the ladder. Not every real calls, we train a lot of times where, hey, I found the victim, and everybody's like, okay, we're red, everybody's good. And well, that's just doing us a huge disjustice all the way around. Because in a real life situation, you're going to drag that fat, slick, wet, naked person all the way outside, down a ladder, or whatever path you took to get in there. You've got to get them back out that way. So, I mean, just stepping it up and doing more realistic training, is how it needs to come. So you don't get that shock of the brand new kid just got out of the academy and rolls up on their first fire. And, well, this isn't how we did it at the academy. And they got that muscle memory already built up.
And one thing with what Kyle was explaining on that particular class, we've heard it numerous times, doing different classes, even when we talk to people about training. What was said numerous times on each group that went through that as they were taking that heavy victim or that heavy mannequin down the ladder was, well, we thought we would leave them up here so that you guys didn't have to do more work. So it's, again, they were taught that by an instructor somewhere that we're going to compensate for teaching you the right way so that I can be lazy and not have to do my job. And I think that was some of it that was really a little bit more disheartening to me, that somebody was lazy enough to basically tell the students that, hey, we're going to make it easy on you and unrealistic on you to make it easy on the instructor. And unfortunately, there's a lot of those people out there that are teaching people that way.
I wanted to hit all this because, you joked around, Gary, with me being down at the academy, and I did just get back from 5 months down there teaching a new class. And, I complain about it, and it sucks going in Monday through Friday, but it's truly the coolest thing I've had the opportunity to do a handful of times is teach these new guys and girls. But I use that stuff with Jared, you were talking about, and Kyle and Gary about, dragging, not let them drag with turnout gear and all this. And same thing you were alluding to, Gary, with in live burns. How many times have we not let people put out, and I'm guilty of it too, in my earlier days teaching, not letting these new people put out fires because it's more work for us to rebuild them and relight them. And then they develop that muscle memory, like, oh, I just got to go into a room and pencil it, and the fire goes out, and then we wonder why new people are burning to death on the fucking nozzle. I don't know how that all happens. There's a ton of instructors on this podcast, both engine house training guys. I see some guys from DeSoto and all that. Some other names that are familiar that are teaching Fire 1 and 2 and all that. And really it falls on all of us to teach the best techniques possible. And if we're too lazy to reset a search room or bring in 3 more pallets and 3/4 of a bale of straw, according to the St. Louis Fire Department SOG's live burns, if we're too lazy to do all that, like, why the hell are we calling ourselves instructors? What are we trying to do? So I'm glad that was brought up, that was hit on. I know we try not to do that in any of our classes, and you won't see that. We'll reset it. We like to make things interesting. And there are several other instructors and companies out there that do the same. I mean, Taurus can probably tell you all day, he's like a mercenary instructor where he teaches all over the place. But as instructors, whether you're just teaching at your organization or you're teaching all over, like we are at Engine House Training, like we owe it to the future generation to give them everything we got and not be lazy and put in the extra effort to make sure they learn what we wish we knew when we started.
And Jeff, we'll go even one further. It's not just the instructors that do that. Your officers have to be on board with that too, because even if you have that brand new person out of the academy, or even it's a, we always resort back to the brand new person. It doesn't have to be a brand new person. It could be a 5-10 year person. It doesn't matter. But a knowledgeable company officer who is not lazy, not afraid to step up and teach something and tell something, also helps put that person in the right direction to open the nozzle, flow water, or whatever it is. That's why you can always tell. You can teach them everything that you possibly can to do the right way through the academy at the beginning of their career. But if they get with an officer who doesn't continue that same learning, then that learning at the beginning, that pattern gets changed. Whereas, the same thing on the backside, we hope that it gets reversed. What they don't learn through training, they get out in the field, they get a good officer that can then develop and build that into that person and make them a better firefighter. So a lot of it doesn't just go back to instructors. A lot of it, again, goes back to company officers and then also senior guys, making sure that we're teaching people to do the right things and do them the right way.
Yeah, agreed. And that's every academy I've taught and every engine house training class we teach. We legitimately, and I'm looking at all your faces and names and stuff. We read every review we get, and I can honestly say we make every class better. And we're not the only company, the only instructors out there that are doing that. But like I said, I do with the city classes. I can honestly say every recruit class I've taught has been a little bit better than the last one, and they've all been better than the one I was in. And if we all keep that goal in mind when we're teaching new people, like especially, or teaching anyone, that each class should be a little better than the last one, and we give out a little bit more information based off our knowledge and experience. As a fire service, as a profession, we're going to head in the right direction. So with all that being said, I'm going to start running around the group and see if anyone's got anything to add to wrap it up, because we've been going an hour and a half. By the time we get through everyone, it's going to be like 2 hours. So let's find anybody, any of our non-engine house guys, Hannah, Josie, Eric, Sparks, Robinson, anybody got anything to add or any questions before we start wrapping up, or you want to say anything? Not trying to put anyone on the spot, but anybody got anything? No one's unmuting themselves.
Earl Station 1. On Hannah's point on the manpower, we're rolling out the door on a very first one. We're lucky if we'll have 2 guys on each truck, and it might be 10, 15 minutes before you get mutual aid or any other truck getting there. Our engineers, our officers, they're actually running command, fighting fire, towing ladders. They're doing everything. Our engineers come off the truck. When the line's deployed, they set the pump, they go fight fire. Second in truck takes over our pump while we're fighting fire. That's how our procedures are to do it. it's a big challenge. I come from a department before I started here that the engineer didn't come off the truck, no matter what. Now here, it's a total different situation. You learn a lot of new ways to do stuff, and a lot faster ways to do stuff. You know, it's with the low manpower, we're seeing it more and more. I know everybody is. It's getting harder to do our jobs to keep up with everything that we got to do. You know, we got a good crew, good group of people with our department. They're hard. They're willing to train. Got a lot of young people wanting to learn, and it's working pretty good so far. It's just the manpower is a big deal, not having it. I know Gary's been through here a couple times with us. He knows how it is. That's all I got.
Yeah, I appreciate you throwing that input in there. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of unique challenges that a lot of us on here don't have to deal with. Like I said, there's 6 people on Tim and I's truck every time we roll out the door, 10 people in the engine house. So I'll just reiterate that having taught up there in DeSoto Rural, like, you guys got to be more well-rounded and better at everything than we do. And you know what? You got to train harder as well. Like, you got more stuff to work on because it's not divided up, you know, into engine, trucks, rescue squads, hook and ladders. Like, you have to know everything. And, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. But unfortunately, that's a terrible analogy because the citizens expect us to master whatever task you're assigned to do on that particular fire. So, hey, thanks for tuning in from DeSoto, and thanks for throwing that out there. Hannah, you got anything, or Jonesy, you got anything to wrap up? I was really hoping Firefighter Bone Jangos would have something to say.
Well, you know, just a couple weeks ago, we had a single pickup cab fire. It's real basic. We pulled up as a 3-man engine crew. I pull our bumper line. It's a 150-foot flat lay. Put the nozzle across my shoulder, run out about 75 feet, brought the nozzle back around to fire attack. Turned around, and I noticed that the engineer was pulling the rest of the load out of the bumper, and it was just being set on the ground. So I had to run back up the line, finish running out the rest of the 75 feet. Once I actually got water, you know, it's 15 seconds to extinguish the fire. Not that big of a deal. But I think it's really important. I would really appreciate if there were officers that would recognize our limitations and create ways to work around it by not creating rules that make your engineers stand by their engines, bar nothing. You know, we had a fatality fire a couple months ago. Similar situation, things could have been done, but they're operating as if we have just, you know, St. Louis amount of resources, and the fact is we don't. That being said, you know, it's also on the firefighters as ourselves to just do what we can with what we got. So train yourself, you know, go online and talk to people who've been there, who've done that, who have more experience than you. Ultimately, you just got to do it the best you can with what you got.
So something to add on that, me and Doc, whenever we were on the engine together, we were really good about making quick game calls like that, coming off the engine, me as the back step guy. There'd be times where I'd call for James to basically take my drop bundle and flake it and stretch it while I'd take the shoulder bundle to get a good stretch. So that really comes down to that practice and then just working with your crew. So James, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, Doc's on here. He's been
Can you
eating
hear me?
chips and shit. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You're not eating.
I hear your sweet voice, Doc.
Hi. What Webb was saying, it just falls back on working with your crew, talking with each other when you get there, get your stuff ready to go, and just, I know it's hard when you're short-staffed or guys are traveling to different stations. You don't have that cohesion as much as you would maybe some other departments, but like you said, we would kind of get a game plan in place, what we were going to do for the day if this were to happen or that were to happen. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we would put something into place thinking this is what we're going to do, and nope. something would happen, and that nope, neither one of those would work. So you got to be flexible, which I know is hard sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know,
Yeah,
after
to
the
go
fire, I
along
went
with
to the engineer and I was like, you know, good job on pumping. It was, it was her first fire to pump at. And so I kind of asked him, like, why didn't you take the rest of that load out and just run it out for me real fast? And that's when it became clear that she was operating within strict guidelines. So just for me, if I had known that, I could have just kept running. I would have gotten that load out a whole lot quicker instead of having to drop it and run back up the hill, full gear and take the rest out before getting to charge it and put the fire out. So yeah, absolutely. Communication, working with your crew, understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. It's all part of it.
Some of that, Hannah, too, and it's kind of a double issue, is if the department mandates that those people act in that capacity, that's one thing. If it's just kind of a standard, the department sets the minimum standard, right? The crew can establish a standard that's much higher for themselves. So don't be constrained to a minimum standard of a department. Create a new standard.
And I will say this, two things to answer or to piggyback off Hannah and Jared. Like, I think we need to work on, especially these rural departments. You should change all your hose loads. And I realize that could be an uphill battle, to where you can clear the whole hose bed in like 15 to 20 feet with one person.
I wasn't even going to touch that, Jeff. Good job on that one.
Oh, trust me, there was a whole conversation about that. I'm not going to touch on it either.
So that would be my first bit of advice. And what I think she's saying, and we won't get into it here, sometimes you're handcuffed by your administration and your rules and regs. And if, without putting anyone on blast, if anyone on here needs some advice or help changing it, or some success stories of, stuff like that, classes we taught and changing where the drivers can be more proactive. A big one in the fire service is RIT teams. Years ago, RIT teams didn't do shit. They had to stand there by the IC and be ready to go in case something happens. And now firefighters are literally alive today because the RIT teams have been proactive and all that. So without putting anyone on blast or picking on any particular department or getting anyone on trouble, if you need help with that, or you need some success stories, reach out to us, and we can put you in contact with departments that have SOGs and policies, to where drivers can be more proactive, and we can get some of that stuff changed, or at least give you the tools to try and make a change. But at the end of the day, we all have bosses and we all have supervisors, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do to follow the rules, as long as it's not going to put your life on the line or get someone else injured. I mean, it sucks, but it kind of is what it is moment. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No, I appreciate all the great advice, y'all.
I like it, y'all. All right. Gary, what do you got for us? We're wrapping up.
Just real quick, everybody that's on here, and again, I'm speaking with the choir because everybody's here. People that want to try to find ways to get out of training and different things. And even though the situation that we're faced nowadays with the social isolation and trainings and limiting the number of people that we can have get together, doesn't mean that we have to stop trying to improve ourselves or getting together to have these conversations, going out, stretching hose, whatever it is. You're cooped up within the firehouse within so many people. That same number of people can actually go out and practice stretching a line, throwing a ladder, making ourselves better. And the people that are using this as an excuse to get out of training or classes, don't let them bring you down. Keep doing what you do. Keep showing up here. Appreciate, we're almost a 2-hour conversation here with a group of people. We've talked about a lot of different things, and it's been a good time and just real laid back, and probably one of the first classes in a while. I've got to enjoy some Jameson soup while I did that, but it's just, again, hanging back and enjoying everybody and enjoying everybody's knowledge and throwing some different ideas off of it. So You guys are here for the right reason. Thanks for what you do. Keep making yourselves better, your departments better, and the fire service better. For that, I thank you and appreciate all of you.
Doc, you got anything?
No.
All right.
I would just,
Muting you. Oh, shoot. I guess he's got some. I muted you again before you.
that's all right. No, I got nothing.
All right. How about IFD, Mr. IFD? Yeah, I can't hear you. I got you unmuted. Well, that sucks.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, we got you now, brother.
That one from that one? That's Bone Jangles. That's Bone Jangles' computer.
Oh, I was going to say Bone Jangles for next or last because Bone's been cracking me up, but.
But Bone Jangles is asking if you guys plan on doing this very often.
Yeah, we're going to do it next week. So we're going to do it once a week from here on out. And we're also going to start recording our podcast again. So yeah, we'll be here next week. Get on Instagram or Facebook or just text us or whatever, email us a subject idea and whatever we get the most hits on. Maybe we'll do a poll or some shit. I'll ask my wife, she does technology. Maybe we'll do a poll or something about next week's subject, but I appreciate you guys tuning in for sure. And Bone's a big hit, but take care of that N95 because, like I said, I had like the same one for 2 weeks. So
that N95 is probably 20 years old.
We can't be wasting that shit.
Yeah, we're wearing them too. Though.
Yeah, 20-year-old N95.
Appreciate it. Hey, Tim, I know your bandwidth in Baldwin sucks, but let's see if you can give some closing statements.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Kind of.
No, kind of. No good.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like a mic problem. It seems like a internet problem.
That could be. We'll get it figured out next week, Jeff. I'll say it then.
You sound like we're. You sound like we're sizing you up for a stroke or something. Like we gotta do the stroke profile on it.
Just be a pretty face, bud. Just be a pretty face.
We'll get you next week. Kelly doesn't look like he's there. Sanders, what do you got for us, buddy? I'm unmuting you. Nope, I didn't do it.
Yep. Am I there now? Nothing. This is a really good thing. Hopefully we can keep this going and keep getting a good group of everybody on here. Kind of add on what Gary said. Just keep doing the training. If departments have downtime right now, try to make the best out of it. Just build up your crews. Keep working with what you've got in house. We've kind of here. We're on like DEFCON 5 lockdown at where I work at. Like nobody can do anything. Can't leave the house or anything. So we set up forcible entry door and set up props, and we've been training every day, just doing what we can to keep going. So, but no, this is an awesome thing. Hopefully we keep all this going.
Cool. Thanks, Kyle, buddy. Bert, you got anything for us?
Not really. Basement fires are a little out of my wheelhouse, so I didn't have a whole lot to add today. But if we get something that I know about, I'll be happy to pipe up next time.
Yeah. All right. Next week's subject is mustaches because clearly you know a lot about that because that's.
I'll bring my wax and my blow dryer, and I'll teach you guys how to get the perfect coat of wax in this bad boy.
Awesome. We're in. All right, Jared.
House.
Jared, what you got for us, buddy? And then I'll give it to Torres and. Hello.
There we go. No, I think it's on topic but off topic, and I'm going to say something that's going to be a little off, but we got to get out of this elitist mentality. Like firefighters are elite when it comes to ladders or to taking action on the fire ground. There's industries that are far better than us at performing some of those fire ground tasks. Ask a painter to throw a ladder. I guarantee you he's going to be better than most firemen. And there's several other examples that you could use, but don't be confined within this box that the fire service has put us in, that the academy or that a book or a curriculum has put us in. We're not elite. We're doing simple, basic tasks on scene. So learn from other industries, learn from other trades. Why are they better than us? And just be willing to accept that they are better than us. Take some tips and tricks, from those industries to make ourselves better. I get that there's safety issues. I get that we have SOGs and SOPs, but the camera and chiefs aren't always watching. Do what needs to be done. And sometimes those things are, the most efficient way to get those things done. So long story short, just don't be confined within the quote unquote safety or elite of the fire service that doesn't really even exist.
Awesome, Jared. Trying to unmute you, Mikey. See if I can. There you go, bud.
Yeah. Thanks for everybody that tuned in and people that are going to watch the recording later on. IFD, what's up, guys? It's fucking awesome. You guys are great, man. Thanks for fucking tuning in. You guys are fucking great.
Yes, we are.
Operators, you guys are all phenomenal. I like to definitely think that I'm nothing compared to you guys. You guys make us all good. So thanks for coming out, hanging out, listening to some shit. And pass this on. IFD, you guys are doing it right now, literally. Open the computer up, sit in front of your firehouse at the station with your guys. If you got time, I understand if there's busy houses, but it ain't that bad. Just pop the fucking thing open. Hey, sit back, kick back. Anything will count. There's going to be somebody in the back that's going to have something to say. Even if it's shitty, I want anybody to say anything. There's got to be some different views out there of things and different perspectives. We definitely don't know it all. I'll never claim I know a quarter of the things that I'm still learning. So by all means, pass this on. If there's guys out there, open this up at the firehouse. This is great. I mean, this whole Zoom thing is phenomenal. I wish we were doing more, but it is what it is. So like I said, thanks for coming out. Just keep up the good work. And it's so nice seeing all you guys. All right. Be safe. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Hey, so real quick, we've covered basement fires. They can be pretty challenging. But like anything else, if you have a plan and you work it and train, till you can't get it wrong, they're going to go like every other operation we perform on the fire scene. I am, dude, I think it's cool as shit that over 20, people were coming and going, but we had 25 people in here at once that wanted to hang out and see this and talk with us. And we'll probably get hundreds more that will listen to it down the line. So that's cool that you want to do this. We're going to keep it going. On behalf of all the engine house instructors and owners, stay safe during this. Take care of your families. We're going to try and do this on a weekly basis now, and get on social media or email us, get on the website, let us know some topics you want to go over to. It's really about hanging out with people that we would be hanging out with if we could in the meantime. All right, so I did find out that I need to bring more than 6 beers when we're going to do this, and we'll carry on. So I did miss Kelly, or Kelly, you might have been gone. Did you want to say anything wrapping up, or are you good? Kelly Foster.
Oh, hey, sorry. I was in and out, had a couple runs during this, but I'm back. I missed most of the basement talk. It sounded very interesting. So we'll get lined out on some topics for next time and keep this going. I like it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kelly. So with all that being said, on behalf of Engine House Training, thanks for joining us today. We'll go ahead and get this posted to where you guys can listen to it later. And hopefully it's just a sign of more good times to come. So thanks everyone for joining us. Have a good week, and be careful out there. Wear your mask and gloves and gown up and all that stuff. Bye, Bone Jangos. All right, let's see.
Hey, Jeff, did you see my text?
No, I'm trying to end the recording.
Okay.
I'm going to stop the recording now. So.
Okay.